building, such as like this, anything you'll find in the city, you're going to see these type of extinguishers, and we base our extinguishers on the type of fuel that they extinguish. So there's 3 different types. There's water extinguishers, carbon dioxide extinguishers, and dry chemical. And this is a dry chemical extinguisher, and we base them on the type of fuel that they extinguish, and those are classified through 5 different classifications: A, B, C, D, and K. You don't really need to remember those, but A is anything that produces like an ash, so a tablecloth, fabrics, woods, plastics, or not plastics necessarily, but anything that would produce ash, like a campfire type of a product. B is like a flammable liquid, gasoline, oil, that sort of stuff. C is anything electrical, circuitry, that type of a thing. And then D is for like flammable metals and things like that nature. And then K is for commercial kitchens. So if you had a commercial kitchen in here, like or in a fancy restaurant, they'd have a different type of extinguisher. But for all intents and purposes, this is your one-stop shop for fire extinguishers, and it puts out pretty much everything. It puts out A, B, and C, and those are your main fire hazards.
Awesome.
The way to kind of distinguish whether you have the proper extinguisher for the proper type of fire is there's a few ways. They'll label it with the lettering A, B, C, but if you can't remember what the A stands for, what the B fuel classification is, or what the C classification is, it also has pictures on there, little pictograms. This one's like a trash bin with campfire logs indicating like ash and things of that sort of variety. This has a gas tank, so a flammable liquid. And then we've got just a electrical plug for any electrical or circuitry type of a thing. And you know, it may not seem that important that you pay attention to this, but if you did have like a water extinguisher and you didn't know it, and you're using it on circuitry, water and electrical don't mix, and water and grease don't mix. So if you had a grease fire and you're using a water extinguisher, you're going to create an explosion.
I see.
So you always want to make sure that you do have the right extinguisher for the right type of fuel that's burning. And these ones, like I said, you'll see them everywhere. Sometimes you'll see them, they'll be white. Sometimes they'll be orange, depending on how old they are. But for the majority of the time, they're red. They look just like this. They always have a pressure gauge on them. So if you went to a building and you saw a big red extinguisher and it didn't have a pressure gauge and it had kind of a hard horn object on the end of it, that would indicate that it's a carbon dioxide extinguisher, and that would only be good for like electrical circuits. Always look for the pressure gauge, and when you're looking at that pressure gauge, you want to make sure that that needle is always in the green. So there's the yellow little pin there, and if that's not in the green, that means it's either over-pressurized or under-pressurized.
Gotcha.
It might not be a big deal, but it might be a big deal.
Yeah.
It might still work, but I'd rather get out of the building than attempt to use it, because it could be undercharged or overcharged and malfunction. So you're looking for the gauge, you're looking for that's properly pressurized, you're looking for the right type of fuel classification, and then you want to make sure that it always has a pin and a locking device on it. So this is like an anti-tamper tag. And it's kind of like if you buy juice or something and they've got the tamper seal on the inside, and you open it up and you have to pull the seal off. Gives you that sense of, okay, this hasn't been, it's fresh, it's good, we know it's not been poisoned or whatever you might think. And the same with this, you know that it hasn't been used, you know that it's been serviced, probably recently, there should be a tag on it. And then it gives you just that confidence. And to remove it, you just kind of twist it, a slight twist and a pull, and it'll come out. You could just pull it, it just sometimes might be a little trickier than if you twist it. It'll just snap that off, simple. And once you have it, the big thing with these, everyone thinks you grab it and you're gonna be holding it and it's gonna go all over the place. And these are, you really have to focus to squeeze them. Like, you can hit it as hard as you want, and it's not going to, it's the pressure on the top of the handle that when you push down, that's when it's going to extinguish, the extinguishing agent will come out. So you can run around with it, shake it around, you can hold it pretty tight without it actually, you have to actually focus on setting it off.
Got it.
This is the nozzle or the hose, and it's basically, you might find some that don't have the hose on there, and that's fine. This is just meant to direct the extinguishing agent in a more precise fashion.
Gotcha.
So when we're using them, there's a few rules that we want to make sure that we're abiding by. One is make sure that you feel safe and confident using it. So if you've never used an extinguisher, if you just are hesitant about it, just get out of here. Get out, wait for the fire department to come, and they'll put out the fire. This applies for your home, business, or whatever, wherever you're at. You also want to make sure that if you do decide to use it, you have the right one, which we know is an ABC. It's an all-purpose extinguisher. It's going to put out anything you want to put out. And you want to make sure that you're positioned in a way that you can get out of the building in an event that this does malfunction or the fire grows to a point where it's unsafe for you. So in here, let's say if you were on fire, Yusuf, and I'm going to put you out with the extinguisher, this would be actually a good spot because we have an exit sign. So we always want our back to an exit. I wouldn't want to come over here and try to do it because if the fire started going up and then I'm back into a corner, I have nowhere to go and I'm in a lot of trouble. So typically you'll get 30 seconds, 20, 30 seconds out of these. It's not very long. I'm probably being very generous on that. Maybe 15 seconds is a little more accurate. And they're meant. It's because they're meant for small growth fires. So like something really in its early stages of fire growth, just was started. Something in a trash can, a small chair like this would be fine. A little pot on the stove type of a fire. Those would all be great with an extinguisher like this. But anytime it's bigger, if it's like a couch, the size of the table, you're not going to put it out with this unless you're really, really well trained in extinguisher usage. So small growth fires, and make sure you have a way out in case something happens. And nothing could happen with the extinguisher. The fire might be fine, but you might just panic or take a big breath of smoke and drop you as well. So it's just feel confident if you're going to use it. Otherwise, get out.
Yes. Thank you.
If you do find like if you do see another extinguisher, like if you do run into like a carbon dioxide extinguisher, you might have one in your server room. Do you have a server room here? Or?
No, we only got these kinds.
Yeah.